Sometime in the year 2007, this weird thing happened where an unfinished copy of a film was ripped off of a bad quality VHS tape, and a small group showcased it on YouTube. That film was Grizzly 2 Revenge, a sequel to Grizzly from 1976. Here's the thing, it wasn't being worked on in 2007. It was apparently a finished movie that was supposed to come out around 1983, but it never did. After this fiasco, the film's editing was redone and polished up, and then the film was officially released sometime between 2020 and 2021. This has to be one of the most bizarre tales from the film world that I've seen in a very long time. Thinking about this movie made me wonder, how many other films are just left sitting on shelves, completely finished, and are we ever going to see them? So I put a list together of 10 completed films you will never see. I had a few come to my mind right off the bat when I thought of this video, and I did a little bit more digging to find some more, and I put together this portion of them for this video that I found interesting. But please understand one thing, there's way more, and I might do a part 2, but for now, let's get started with The Good Life. Sylvester Stallone had made a huge name for himself in the late 70s and throughout the 80s, enough so that he's always been able to call a lot of the shots on project he gets involved in. Recently, he was able to give his daughter a role on the series Tulsa King. Though it's minor, it's not the first time he's tried to help family. Throughout the Rocky films, Stallone would give a few cameo roles to his younger brother Frank, playing one of the singers on the street corner. Frank would go on to have many small roles in various other films and television shows, but never had his big break. His true calling is as a singer with 8 successful studio albums released over 20 years. But Stallone tried to create a breakout role for him with a film called The Good Life in 1997. The film is about 3 guys who move from Miami to New Jersey, where a plot develops on how 2 of those guys are trying to kill the 3rd guy. That's pretty much the exact synopsis of this film. Frank would play the main character of Tony Piano, which sounds like a name someone on SNL would make up for a fake gangster like Paulie Shoelaces or Joey Bag of Donuts. This was supposed to be his first big starring role, yet it never saw a release to major audiences once it was finished. And it is finished. The problems arose when the director and producers were promoting Sylvester Stallone as the main character. Now, Stallone is in the film, but it's just a cameo. And this upset him so much, Stallone would sue the production team and the film would essentially disappear.
Everybody's got their own ideas. Some smart, some really stupid.
When this promotional reel suggested, according to Sly, that instead of a cameo appearance, he was the star, he sued the filmmakers for $20 million, his average salary for a film these days.
But it is finished and it's out there, and it might never see the light of day. Next up, do we have any Texas Chainsaw Massacre fans in the crowd? Well, if you are, you know exactly what this is. For the rest out there, this will be new to you, so what is All-American Massacre? Well, it's a prequel. Maybe a sequel? Probably just a spin-off. It is somehow correlated to the first 2 Texas Chainsaw films, following the character Chop Top, portrayed by Bill Moseley, one of the biggest names in the horror community for the last 30 years. But this film has never been seen by fans. A trailer was released, and then the film was shelved for no particular reason. Seriously, I can't find a single reason why this film was not released. Some negatives went up for sale on eBay in 2013, but they were bought and basically disappeared. In 2020, a small clip surfaced on YouTube, and that's about it. There is no word of anything regarding this film's release, even to its fanbase. It's also strange how there's just no reason why. But this next one has a reason, and it kind of upsets me. This is probably the most well-known example, as it did make a lot of headlines recently, so most are aware of it, but it's the shocking audacity of Warner Brothers that gets me with this. The first time Batgirl was announced was in 2017, and it was meant to be helmed by Joss Whedon, but he dropped out a year later. Then, Christina Hodson was hired to write the script, which she was part of the Bird of Prey film. She's also been involved in Bumblebee and The Flash. The director role was then taken up by the team of Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah. At this point, probably known best as the directors of Bad Boys for Life. It bounced around in the realm of direct streaming or to be released in theaters, But then the pandemic hit and it pushed development back as well. It started filming by the end of 2021 and was finished in about 6 months. It cost $90 million to make. By the end of 2022, it was revealed that the WB shelved the film for a tax write-off, as that was more financially sound than trying to let the film compete in theaters. Which, business-wise, okay, I guess. But as a fan who saw nothing but positivity for the film from the actors involved and the community that wanted it, it's just egregious to think that they won't even let it out on streaming. Peter Safran has stated the film is unreleasable and it would hurt the DC brand. This is the guy that took over DC Studios along with James Gunn a year ago, so it probably doesn't fit in with their plans either, so they downplay it. I'd love to see this movie, but I guess I never will. This is another one I'd love to see just for the story. Probably the most expensive example on this list is this whopping $130 million film, Empires of the Deep, which was meant to release in 2013. The film is written and produced by John Jang. Who is this? Oh, he's a real estate guy. Huh. I find it funny that looking up his name and the top results all have to do with this film. That's it. Because this isn't a director, nor is he any sort of producer. He isn't part of any company that should be making films. He's a guy with a lot of money that hired a film crew and wanted to make this big box office blockbuster. He even filmed it in 3D. He got one name in that film that I recognized in Olga Kurylenko, known for films like Oblivion, Quantum of Solace, Mara, The Room, Black Widow. A big name star as the main character might have saved this film. It was apparently Jiang's masterpiece, a script he wrote about mermaid kingdoms going to war. A trailer was released, hundreds of set photos can be found with a quick search, and it's still never been released. Apparently, despite its high budget, they didn't have the money for massive worldwide distribution. They attempted some crowdfunding a few years ago with no luck. I almost wanted to get released just to see if it was worth it. Following that one up with The Day the Clown Cried. Hard to see something like this from famous 60s personality Jerry Lewis, but once you know what happened, it becomes a little more understandable. It's a film about a clown who was taken to an internment camp during World War II. It is directed by Lewis himself, while he also was credited as the writer, although the screenplay itself was written by Joan O'Brien and Charles Denton. Lewis had made changes to the script which O'Brien did not like, as Lewis wanted to portray the clown as more upbeat, while the original screenplay depicts the clown as being more selfish and cowardly. The film had a hard time finding financial backing as well, as a story about the Holocaust of this nature did not seem to turn many heads, especially with somebody like Jerry Lewis in it. Once the film was finished, Lewis hated it and swore it would never be released. However, in 2015, he donated an incomplete copy of the film to the Library of Congress, specifying that under no conditions should the film be seen by anyone until after June 2024, which is coming up pretty soon, but who knows if this will even happen. This is one of those films that has a sort of urban legend that follows it around, and there's a lot that's been said about it that you can find in interviews from Jerry Lewis himself up until his death in 2017.
We going to get to see The Day the Clown Cried?
No. No. You want to know why? Simply because it's very easy to sit in front of an audience and expound on your feelings. It's another thing to have to deal with those feelings. And in terms of that film, I was embarrassed. I was ashamed of the work, and I was grateful that I had the power to contain it all and never let anybody see it. It was bad, bad, bad. It could have been wonderful, but I slipped up. I didn't quite get it, and I didn't quite have enough sense to find out why I'm doing it, and maybe there would be an answer.
Now this next one is a little bit tricky because it was sort of released, but never to its full capacity and never fully distributed. Nothing Lasts Forever is a 1984 sci-fi comedy written and directed by Tom Schiller, a famous SNL writer, but this was the only full feature film he ever did. It starred Zach Galligan, Lauren Tom, Sam Jaffe, and also the comedy duo of Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd. It's said to be a strange post-apocalyptic film about an artist who is struggling when he meets a magical hobo that lives under the city, who will grant him whatever he wishes, but he must first travel to the moon. This sounds weird, and that's me paraphrasing a lot, but that explanation is the Cliff Notes and all you really need to know. During the press run to promote the film, MGM, the production company for the film, saw very little faith in it, so they canceled its release. It was then aired a few times on various networks in the 90s, and then it went back into obscurity. Then, between 2004 up until about 2015, there were special screenings of the film where some members of the cast showed up for Q&As at various film festivals. A bootleg of the film was posted on YouTube once and immediately removed for copyright infringement by Turner Entertainment. There is a trailer you can still see and another bootleg that is sort of floating around, but it's edited, removing some of the scenes from the final copy, so it isn't the complete film. The full completed film has never been released. Maybe some people have seen it, but there is no widespread way to find it, unless you count that edited copy you have to dig for, but I just don't count that. This one might surprise you. Temptation. Zoe Saldana might be one of the biggest actresses of the last decade, and she is definitely one of the few with one big thing on her record. She has been in 4 of the top 10 highest grossing movies of all time. So it's interesting to find a film on her record that is just sitting in nothingness. Temptation is a 2004 musical that was seen during that same year's New York Music Festival, and then it disappeared. The film is meant to be a musical reimagining of the story of Faust, where a deal is made with the devil for a music career. It's directed by Mark Toloff, and it's only his second directed film, the other not being so popular either. Producer Carrie Burden said the film was still unfinished and would be released, but it's been 20 years now and nothing has come out. If that one didn't surprise you, then this one's gotta. Andy Warhol. Not a name I normally relate to movies, though he is historically known for his imagery in short films and photography. This is an interesting bit to find in the depths of Batman lore. Yes, during the era of the infamous Adam West-led Batman television series, Warhol loved Batman so much, he made his own film where Batman fights Dracula. This is what that 2005 animated film, The Batman vs. Dracula, got its inspiration from. It was filmed in black and white somewhere in Long Island, and once it was completed, its release was stopped, since Warhol had none of the rights from DC to make this film in the first place. The film was thought to be lost, but scenes popped up in a documentary from 2006, making some hopeful it might get brought out of its slumber. That has not been the case so far, and the film in its entirety is buried. Who knows if it will ever be uncovered. Now this next one, I don't know if this will piss anybody off, but remember Kevin Spacey? He was one of those actors who seemed untouchable, starring in some of the greatest movies of the 90s and the early 2000s, along with being an Academy Award winner. Then some serious accusations started to come to light, and his career is basically over with no shot at redemption, ever. The shock of all of that happening came so quickly, there was a film he was working on called Gore that was meant to be released in 2017. It's a biopic about Gore Vidal, and it was meant to tell his life story. Safe to say, this will certainly never be seen, as the cancellation of Kevin Spacey as an actor and a person also leaves this film canceled pretty much entirely. Now there's a few interesting things about this next one. Blackwater Transit. Firstly, it's based on a novel of the same name that was relatively successful. The first book meant to be adapted to film by popular novelist Karsten Stroud. It was directed by Tony Kaye, famous for American History X and Detachment. Not to mention, it has a ridiculous cast to back it up. Carl Urban, Lawrence Fishburne, Stephen Dorff, Brittany Snow, Aisha Tyler, Bill Cobbs, Beverly D'Angelo. This all sounds like a recipe for success. So what happened? Well, money and a lot of legal issues. Once production wrapped, a cut of the film was shown at the Cannes Film Market. After that, one of the producers, David Bergstein, tied the film up on purpose, basically using the film's unfinished state as an excuse to avoid paying out what was owed to the film's production. Essentially, wherever he got the money from for the film, he didn't want to give it up. This was not his only financial issue, but many others were brought up against him where the film was attached to it. This would eventually lead to him being sentenced to 8 years in prison for fraud. Now, with the movie being attached to a felony, there's no telling if it'll ever make it to the public. Truth is, it probably won't. So I have a little bit of a bonus film simply because we will never see it. As in the collective we of anyone watching this right now. We will not see this film. But one day, someone will. The film 100 Years is an experimental film written by John Malkovich and directed by Robert Rodriguez. Its release date is set for November 18th, 2115. It is 2024. I, at this very moment, am 37 years old. I will not be alive when this film is released. John Malkovich will not be alive when this film is released. Anyone born within the beginning of this century will likely not be alive by the time this film is released. Anyone born today or within this collective year might be alive. But based on the average human life expectancy, that's about 73 years, no one born within the next decade, statistically, will have a chance to see this film. Some teasers have been released to show off what they are trying with this film, but the plot and anything about it is kept extremely secretive. The only copy of this film is kept in a high-tech safe, which has a timer where it will not open until the date of the premiere. It was said they made about 1,000 tickets that were all metal and issued them to special guests around the world to pass down to their descendants to see the film when it is released from the vault. So as far as we will never see it, I might be wrong. Maybe. If I'm around in 2115, I'll look back on this and admit to being mistaken, but that's highly unlikely. Which I accept, but this is still an interesting case scenario and hopefully it pays off. Only time will tell, I guess. This was fun and definitely some intriguing pieces of film history. And I was honest, you can find so many more if you want to look them up. But if you enjoyed this and you'd like a part 2, let me know in the comments and I'll put together another batch. Check out the other videos on my channel if you like this as well and subscribe to see more. Thanks for watching.